Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Good to see you again, Eric.
Hey, Bob. Once again, into the breach. And we are pre-taping, as usual. Not all the time, but usual.
Yes.
And so this will probably air the first Monday in May. And by then, the political landscape will be probably slightly different than it is while we're pre-taping.
Right. There are some issues to resolve and some primaries to go.
Yes. And basically, in the back end of April, with something like 5-6 states on that last Tuesday in April, Bernie Sanders won 1, Hillary Clinton won 4, correct, and Donald Trump swept all 5.
Correct.
And so the mathematical equation seems to point towards the fact that Hillary Clinton will probably become the Democratic nominee for president in 2016. And Bob, what do you think the mathematical possibilities are for the Republicans?
Now, Trump is getting close, and the mathematics are getting bad for Ted Cruz. I guess mathematically, if you look at the numbers directly, he's out of it. Trump, if you look ahead to the primaries where he has a chance in, mathematically, it's a very hard road for Cruz. But I'm worried not so much about the numbers, but about how things go at the convention. But that's a whole different topic because rules may change in between now and then.
Yeah, we can even speculate on that a little later in the show. But you mentioned Ted Cruz. That back end, that last week in April. He came out with a very interesting announcement. Why don't you remind people?
Yes, and it's conveniently just shortly before we tape this, he announced his running mate, someone we had seen before, Carly Fiorina. And much to no one's surprise, the social media is a buzz about it today.
Well, the interesting thing is that another Ted Cruz, why don't we take another slap behind the front of the back and whatever slap at Donald Trump, because you know Donald Trump basically went head-to-head with Carly Fiorina.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with most of his opponents, he'll be wanting to do that anyway.
Big personal insult on the woman's looks, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So, but speaking of Ted Cruz, let me put something into perspective, because this has been bugging me all throughout the back end of this presidential campaign. Ted Cruz has been fighting about get me head-to-head, one-on-one with Donald Trump, and I'll be the man, I'll be your guy, and all that. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why anybody's listening to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is not eligible to run for president, all right? I'm going to say it right here, right now, and no one will challenge me in a court of law because he's not going to get the nomination. But if by some strange way, shape, or form he managed to actually acquire the Republican nomination for president, that would be challenged in a court of law so fast, and he would lose, okay? And the prime reason for that, of course, as we all know, is he's not a natural-born citizen of the United States of America, period.
But here again, now we have a Supreme Court that's split, and now we have other federal courts which I don't always have great opinions about. This has been challenged before, not through the legal process, but
not for Ted Cruz.
No, not for, no.
That's my point.
Yes, but it's been vetted by constitutional, what can we say, historians.
A number of constitutional scholars have weighed in on Ted Cruz, and if you listen to those different lawyers interpreting, quote, the Constitution, it's 50-50, if not 60-40, that Ted Cruz is not eligible.
That's my point. Okay.
But if it ever got challenged for real, he would lose.
By the letter of the law, it doesn't look like he's eligible. I don't think we need to worry about it, but I do think that he can get something by and get away with it.
He might, but most of the Senate don't like Ted Cruz on either party, so who's going to help him challenge that?
That's actually the part that's going to make sure that it doesn't work.
Yeah, so my thinking is this has been a waste of time, colossal waste of time for most people, because Ted Cruz is not eligible.
And we were speaking about this before we before we started taping. To me, it's like a hockey game where you've pulled the goaltender. You're really getting desperate at this point, and you're looking for the end game to see what can we do in the last minute to at least change things or to get a little leverage at the convention, if not a win.
The Carly Fiorina announcement.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That, you mean the old desperation Hail Mary pass?
Basically.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we jumped out of the box with politics. So I guess we can stay with politics, at least holistically. We're just going to try to tie the whole thing together.
Sure.
Anyway, let's backtrack, because when this airs, people will still be talking about Prince. Now, you know the area Prince came from well, because you were out there.
I was in the Midwest for a little while.
That's
sure.
Right. So Prince for me was an amazing, iconic figure. I was not a big Prince fan because most of his plays tend to be more rock and pop rock,
Okay.
as opposed to his phenomenal blues chops. That he was like Jimi Hendrix, as deeply grounded in blues as anybody. Could have been a great blues musician had he chose to be.
Had he chose to
had
be.
he
But
chosen to be. He was that prolific on his instrument, on that guitar. But he was prolific on 21 different instruments. I forget how many. The point of the matter is, the man was truly, the overused word, genius, but in the full rounded sense of it, as far as musical capability, as playing the instrument, writing, producing, marketing, you name it. All right?
The cool thing about some of these retrospectives I've seen is they've unearthed some facts I didn't know. And of course, there's lots of that out there. I knew he was prolific, had no idea he was that prolific at knowing that many instruments and that much about how to write the music, how to get the proper collaboration if he did need help. Astounding, but please go ahead.
Truly amazing. But for me, the reason why I actually was a Prince fan without being a Prince music fan was Prince's determination to own himself and be himself. And for me, that speaks to exactly what we've been struggling with for 400 years in North America.
Okay.
And his battle with Warner Brothers encapsulated what we've been trying to do for 400 years as a people. For me, he symbolizes one individual as a symbol of the whole people. I don't know how much you followed that battle with Warner Brothers, but basically Prince didn't even own his own name.
Right.
Okay? And because Warner Brothers pretty much had him bottled up and were making a ton of money from him and his creativity, he just plastered the word slave across his cheek and walked around with it to tell the world, good as I am, great as I am, prolific as I am, I'm nothing but a high-priced slave. And I am going to work, slave, and get myself out of servitude. And that became the battle royal that became the artist formerly known as Prince, which everybody said, is this man crazy? What kind of nonsense is that? He doesn't have a name, the artist formerly known as, then all of a sudden he was just a symbol. But that was Prince saying, no, Warner Brothers owns Prince. I don't have to be Prince. I'm going to be me, whatever I choose to be as me.
And I readily admit that I did not understand that at first, what he was doing by throwing the name away and going to that symbol. Right away, I was thinking to myself, yeah, he's crazy. He's gone over the edge. What pushed him over the edge? Why are we going this way? He's making millions, billions, maybe total with his concerts. But then I started to understand where he was going with that. It's like, oh, okay, these folks are trying to tell you what to do, when to do it, and how to frame your music and where we will play it. And he basically said, no, this is my talent, this is my legacy, here's the name, you can have it, I'll go to this symbol. Now it took me personally a while to get that, and in retrospect, I feel dumb, but I figure that many people were in the boat with me at that time.
Well, the only reason I understood it at the time was because, having paid close attention to musicians and the fact that half the time, even when they wrote the works, somebody would co-opt it by making sure that somebody else's name got put on the song that was written. And that happened to a whole lot of rhythm and blues artists back in the day. That happened to a whole lot of other young pop artists where somebody would take credit for their actual creativity. So I had that sense of the history of the struggle. So I knew exactly what he was battling with Warner Brothers.
And full disclosure, you write music.
I do. On occasion, I've been known to put something together to help some of my documentary projects. And because there is that bent in me to have to create musically, because I don't really write music, I just absorb what the universe sends me, and then I try to give it back.
Okay, that's a very good way to put it.
Well,
Yes.
I never knew what it was until I heard a Native American individual say the exact same thing on somebody's radio show. He said, "We don't have songwriters. We have people who catch the music from the universe and give it back to the people."
Yeah.
And then I heard Dizzy Gillespie say the exact same thing on another radio station interview, and he said, "The music is all around you. It's all around us. It's in the universe. All we have to do is be open to it, capture it, and recycle it back."
And interpret it.
As soon as I heard it, I went, that's what I've been gifted with. I can actually hear and feel this stuff that's all around me, and then I capture it and I recycle it and give it back. That burial ground theme, then I'll be free to travel home. One of my all-time greatest works, as far as I'm concerned, isn't a work. It's something that came out of the burial ground in Lower Manhattan. Right. And I just captured it, put it together. I had Darryl Waters do the notation for me and do an arrangement for me.
Okay.
And then I had Noel Pointer play it, and then I had Ebony Joanne sing it. And all that stuff is just the music of the universe coming through us and coming back to the people. So yes.
So you get it.
I get
and
what Prince is doing.
And when somebody tries to take that from, well, not take it from you,
when they
but
try to co-opt it and own it and
Right.
tell you that, yeah, well, we don't want to put that out there because we think that's not going to sell. And Prince's thing was, I'm not just this. I'm this, this, and this. I'm whatever moves me now. And so, and fortunately for us, he was moved prolifically. The stuff that I've since read up on him, about his musical career, this man was writing a song a day. He was creating, he would go into his studio and just put stuff down, stuff that he'd generated the night before or had captured the night before, and then he would just go into his studio and just work on it. It's an amazing, amazing guy. But to get back to where we started on, his battle and his decision to always be himself, not be somebody else's image of him, not what somebody else wanted him to be, that to me is symbolic of the same struggle that we've had as a people on this North American section of the planet. And so Prince is my latest iconic hero for epitomizing that struggle. But his battle, to me, has been picked up by the latest incarnation of young black people. Now, there's a thing going around about Beyonce and Beyonce's battle with whomever, whatever, but there are a couple of reviews that Pearl Duncan, another one of our great resource folks, sent me, some articles that deal with what Beyonce is actually dealing with her latest Lemonade album, which I haven't heard yet, but the article gets to the fact that she's not only dealing with personal pain, she's dealing with the history, legacy of black women's and black women's struggle in this society over the years and over the centuries, from grandmothers to grandmothers to great-grandmothers to daughters, and part of the pictorial representation on the album jacket and within the video, as the article stated, speaks to that arc of the struggle. And there are some interpretations that some of her newest works are now becoming as political in nature as the musical folks used to be back in the 60s. And I'm saying hooray and hallelujah. It's time for this generation to stand up and take that musical legacy that we took for granted.
Absolutely.
Because we had nothing but activists, political...
all around us.
All around us in the 60s.
Every
music
week
of the 60s.
with a new 45.
People would be out there talking about what was going down, what was wrong, if it was Ship Ahoy, dealing with that transatlantic slave passage, if it wasn't slave, if it wasn't We Can Work It Out, if it wasn't Ain't Nothing Gonna Stop Us Now. You McFadden and Whitehead, whoever was writing, you had nothing but a series of articulate musical anthems that dealt with our struggle as black people in North America. And so I'm happy that Beyonce is joining that pantheon.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You just said you hadn't heard the album. I haven't heard the album. I've heard so much influence from the album already, though, just from these few days. Just what you said about the feelings that she's exuding through her music, the political stances that she takes through the music, the fact that you can't possibly repackage this album. If you were a producer and said, oh, no, this is a little too strident, that waters everything down to the point where this album would be unsellable. She really, and looking at the subjects that she touches upon, I need to listen to it. I mean, without even, I don't even know what the beat is, what the sound is, the rhythm, it doesn't matter. I really want to see how she's managed to get this message out so effectively, and it's a visual album. So that's an amazing amount of work to get that kind of influence out effectively without the whitewashing.
What I love is all the chatter and the buzz and arguments that are coming out of just her putting the album out.
Right.
And now people are accusing her of trying to capitalize on the Black Lives Matter movement and become political, even though she came out of just a pop culture. Hey, sometimes people have to learn and grow. Mm-hmm. And if you learn and you grow and you're willing to step into the arena, who should be knocking you?
Right.
They should be ringing your bell and say, thank you, welcome to the club.
Reinvention is not new in this industry. People reinvent and move ahead all the time, and this is no exception.
I love the fact that it's a, quote, visual album.
Right.
What does that hark back to but Purple Rain?
Right.
What does that not say? But Prince says, we're going to make a music video, but it's going to be a movie music video. So yeah, these people are catching up, and they're getting into the struggle. But here, let's go back to the political Black Lives Matter, because as we tape this, it's like a day after our incumbent president, the esteemed Barack Obama, was in London and had the temerity to sound off on Black Lives Matter and claiming that they need to do more than just yell. Okay, so we've had bones to pick with our incumbent president on more than one occasion, and on this one, I think we have a bone to pick with him again. I'm sorry, I'm not happy that he's basically trying to say to them, stop yelling. You can make more hay and do much better if you come to the table and sit down and talk. Well, guess what? For 400 years, we've been coming to the table and talking, and I can speak from having done the research, 16 and a half, 20 plus hours of dealing with the historical arc of blacks in North America in a number of documentary series, and I'm telling you, it's a never-ending struggle. And nobody wants to listen, and when you try to do it quietly, or when you try to do it in a silent or subtle way, goes right under or right over. They don't want to hear it. And these young people have said enough is enough, and so they're making noise. And so for the president to talk about let's do this in a different way and stop yelling, talk about what's happening. You've got that survey that alludes to what's happening in the country since Barack Obama got elected. He should be the last one to be talking about being silent.
Right.
Give us some quotes on that survey.
I mean, let's stick on this subject for just
before we go to that. Okay.
I mean, just briefly. So, do you feel that Obama went a little too far in his coaching of these young folks in terms of sometimes you need to take a partial solution to get your main solution to move forward? Did you thought he went too far in saying you don't need to yell so much? It's time to sit down. You need to sit down sooner.
No. My point is, somebody can sit down over here while you keep yelling over here.
There you go.
That's my game plan.
Okay.
See, we need good cop, bad cop, because they don't listen to the good cop.
Okay.
They only listen to the good cop when the bad cop is out here yelling and saying, hey, we got a problem. You got a problem. We don't have a problem. We have a problem with you.
Okay.
And that's what these people are saying. And we've been saying this on more than one Media Watch show, that people who keep trying to marginalize the Black Lives Matter movement are not hip or privy to the 400-year historical arc of our struggle in this country.
Right.
And we need to help educate them. And so, yeah, he needs to be thrown under the bus for
this
making
one.
that comment.
Okay.
Like he's trying to throw them under the bus. I mean, he's supposedly being politic about, oh, it's time for a different approach and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
But we've tried all those soft approaches, and they don't seem to work.
Okay.
It works when we get in the streets. Hey, how do you think ACT UP got all this LGBT stuff passed?
Oh, yeah.
They got out in the
They had
streets
to
and they got in the
scream. They had to
people's
yell.
faces,
Right.
okay? How do you think we got most of these civil rights laws passed? We got into the streets,
Right.
and we sat down. We had dogs run rampant all over us, and we had hoses. And I shouldn't say we, said they, because
Right.
those young people back then, because I wasn't down there getting hoses.
No.
I may have picketed a Woolworth somewhere in the north,
Right,
but I
right.
wasn't down there.
Right. I didn't go to the March on Washington, but my mother did.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's,
actually,
you have to,
I was in the military trying to make the world safe for
Yeah.
democracy.
Okay.
But anyway,
But-
I mean,
but-
we're not digressing. This is germane to this discussion, folks. But see, for Obama to try to tell them to be quiet speaks to the fact that he basically is trying to put his head in the sand as to what kind of progress has been made in this country racially. Because as much as we take 2 steps forward, a number of times we get pushed back 3 steps.
Okay.
And
that goes to the point of this other
that
article.
goes to the point of the article. And so that being the setup, talk about when we took the 2 steps forward with Obama getting elected the first time. Bingo. What was the climate? What was the tenor? And what was the hope?
Well, the hope that it was that we would hit this post-racial America, now that we had finally a black president who was going to bring both sides together, and that was the subject of a lot of his initial speeches after he was elected and even before Inauguration Day.
Right.
He was going to take the 2 sides together, finally sit down and hammer out a lot of things that had kept us apart.
And a lot of people in the country said, yes, it's that time, and we agree, and we think that's exactly where we are today.
But this Washington Post story, and I'll pull up by Peniel Joseph, which appeared not long before we taped here, goes into some of the history. It has a lot of the numbers, but here's a good quote. 7 years later, such profound optimism seems misplaced.
7 years after the initial election
of
Barack
Obama, correct. Almost immediately, the Obama presidency unleashed racial furies that have only multiplied over time. From the Tea Party's racially tinged attacks on the president's policy agenda to the, quote, birther movement, more overtly racist fantasies asserting that Obama was not even an American. And let me just skip on to the next graph, which I think explains a lot. If racial conflict in the form of birthers, Tea Partiers, and gnawing resentments implicitly shadowed Obama's first term, it erupted into open warfare during much of his second. And it just devolves from there. Just astounding levels of hope that we had in 2008 that are nowhere close to being realized as we sit here in 2016.
We got about 4.5 minutes left. And basically to come full circle about that legacy of hope that we all thought might have been dawning in 2008. In 2015, when this guy comes riding down his escalator in his building and he accuses Mexicans of being rapists, of being drug addicts, of sending nothing but murderers and whatever. And that is the tenor of the discussion and the discourse that we've had for the last 12 months coming out of Donald Trump and many of people of his parties. We've got more Islamophobia. We've got more, let's put police in the Muslim communities and just profile the entire community. And so that's where we are in 2016, folks. So the circle is squared, as they used to say, okay? Yes. So Barack Obama should not be trying to silence Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter got into Hillary Clinton's face about Hillary Clinton and her husband's capital punishment. Let's just lock them up, throw away the key and all that. Hillary Clinton was known to call black people predators and whatever in one of her speeches. Bill Clinton is the guy who actually threw us under the bus on this war on drugs, even though he didn't start it. He locked up more people. He got all this incarceration mentality going. And so when people get up in arms about Hillary Clinton, especially black people, they have every reason. That doesn't mean Bernie Sanders is Mr. The white knight.
He's not Mr.
Armor.
Clean either. Okay.
And I'm not advocating for either one of these individuals. I will go out on a limb and say either one of them is 10 times better than anyone I see personally on the Republican side.
That's an easy one, sure.
Of the ledger. But as a black person in this country, I am sick and tired of having to choose between the lesser of two evils. I am sick and tired of not having someone who's actually looking out for my interests as a black person, who is still fighting an uphill battle on full first-class citizenship, equal ability to vote, because they keep having to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act every umpteen number of years, which basically gave black people the right to vote, which theoretically we were supposed to have gotten under the 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment, whichever one you want to nail it down. But we have to always keep getting our rights begged for, supposedly handed to us on a temporary basis. I'm tired of it.
Now wait a second. Didn't we settle this in 2008? We thought we would. I'm kidding, of course. We thought we had settled this in electing a black president.
Well,
but and as I just said, 7.5 years later, we're not even close to having the assurance that we can go someplace and vote and not be hassled for an ID or have another right infringed upon, as we've seen in these urban outbreaks in the last few years.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you got a minute left. Don't talk to me about which presidential choice we have to deal with, all right? Talk to me about getting registered and voting in your local state elections, because until you can get those state elections to stop being run by ALEC and all these right-wing conservative people that write their laws for them and get them passed, and get all these Republican governors who usually rubber stamp what their Republican state legislatures do.
Folks like Scott Walker.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you put into the White House, because if the election districts are already gerrymandered by those state folks,
that's absolutely right.
You're not going to be able to get a House that can help you pass the right laws, who can help whatever president you elect get you what you need. So it's a Hobson's choice. It's a whatever. But anyway, Bob, I think I got up on a horse.
No, we had a good discussion.
Hey, listen, this has been Media Watch. I'm your host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch us on YouTube on Media Watch EVT.
And thanks, EVT Educational Productions and Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Be well, stay strong, and we'll catch you the next time.